fantastic way to start, and a good question I have for you. Where did you come up with that voice?
Sort of round about there, actually. It was, I don't know, I saw a great Japanese actor in Edinburgh at the International Festival there, and he was appearing in a production of Medea, which is, some people know, a great Greek tragedy. He was actually playing a woman, and he was very young, but he produced an extraordinary voice. And like many Japanese actors, their training enables them to do it from the stomach, from below. Most of our residents practice either in the head, which it is now, or in the chest, which is there. But further down, you can get it from the stomach. You can't do it all the time, otherwise you'll be throwing up. Short takes, so it worked. Also, I thought it went with the face. Really. You know, disgusting reptilian face. So it is even a disgusting reptilian voice.
It is incredible because there's a famous company that has a tagline. There's just this peaceful tagline that they say, but you say it sounds so evil, and that's do it.
Oh yes.
That was my invitation, by the way.
That was very good. I'm very impressed. That was a good day, the Do It day. You remember my horrible, devious character had arranged for himself to be, imprisoned, kidnapped, and in order really to slaughter Christopher Lee. And I didn't want to do that. I really like Christopher. But it had to be done, and Anakin was sort of dithering, So it was kind of fun. We did so many takes, as the way you do. And then I did one with sort of impatient but being asked to do yet another take, and impatient with Anakin not doing his job. So it came out, do it. And George said that's the one. And then I didn't know it into Star Wars history, but here you all are.
And how did you get into Star Wars in the beginning? Let's go all the way back to 1982, I guess?
Yes, God, many years ago, when I was older and younger at the same time, if you know what I mean. I'm so thrilled with this chair, I can't stop swimming. Before I answer your question, a little aside about this.
Well, they told me they squeaked not to move, and I said, what about Ian?
Oh, really?
They're like, it doesn't matter, Ian can do what he wants.
I like a good swivel. But when we were doing the first one, Return of the Jedi, of course I was in the chair, and everything was automated, But the automation could never hit the mark, somehow. So George said, would you mind doing it? I said, no, not at all. So underneath, and I ruined it for millions of you older people, underneath my garment with my little feet going. From the chair, it all comes back to me. But get back to your question. One day, I was at home, and the phone rang to my agent, and he said the great words, George Lucas would like to see you. Oh, I said. And outside of my window, I could see a car which they'd sent from Elstree Studios, where they were filming a film called Blue Harvest, many of you know, was the original artificial title. Oh, it's gone dark.
It's on a very dark side.
Yes, I know. Have I done that? So a film called Blue Harvest that apparently George Lucas was making at Elstree. Well, it didn't sound very probable to me, but you want to meet George Lucas? Of course I do. So I got in the car, and it was lunchtime on set of a film that later was called Return of the Jedi. I think it was called Revenge of the Jedi before it was called Return of the Jedi. And I met George and Richard Marquand, the director of the movie, and we had a very nice chat, 10 minutes. Unfortunately, I can't remember anything we talked about, but it was nothing to do with movies or my career or their careers or anything. So 10 minutes was up, and I was thanked, and on the way out, George turned to Richard and said, hey, great nose. That's all that's sort of flattering, isn't it? Anyway, I thought you're very good, you can come back. I thought nothing more of it, really, until I got home, and the phone was ringing again with my agent, who said, it's great news, you've got the part. I went, oh, that's great. What's the part? And he went, minutes later, leafing through some papers. Apparently he's called the Emperor of
And a nice, interesting segue from that. So 16 years later, the 90s, Mr. Lucas calls you back. Or how do you get contact that way?
Yeah, his casting director, charming woman called Robin Gerland, phoned me up and said George is in town. He'd like to say hello. Okay, great. So I thought, maybe we'll have a drink or lunch or something like that. So I went along to his hotel. There he was. I always say this is a terrible joke, but wearing the same shirt he was wearing always. It's a check shirt. I'm sure he has one or two. And so, it was like an apparition, like a sort of legendary ghost. Anyway, he said, can we get you something, what would you like? And I said, I'll just take a water, thank you. And he said, well, do you know anyone who wants to play an emperor? I said, I think you know the answer to that. He said, yeah, I thought I did. You can give the water back. And that was the end of the interview. And then he told me a little bit, but not too much, about the prequels and about two characters. One called Senator Palpatine. I said, oh, great. Yeah, he starts off as and George said, perfectly ordinary, not terribly interesting, not obviously evil or warped in any way. I mean, he was a politician, so that's kind of given, isn't it? But there's another character, he said, who is all of those things, who's really terrible, and he has a sort of insidious effect on everyone or everything he touches. And I thought, that sounds a really good part. I wish I was playing that one. Little did I know. And that's the phrase for joining up to the Star Wars universe, little did I know. And that's the way it's always remained. But then I found out fairly soon that those two people were one, and it wasn't exactly hidden from the audience either. So it was the progression of evil, not just my character of course, but principally the descent into darkness of the guy who later became Darth.
And then you got lucky for the third time.
You're exactly right. Amazing, because as you know, the end of Return of the Jedi, I was king. And how did I know that? Because I asked George Lucas after I'd gone down. I said, does he come back in any form? Maybe another person? Maybe, I don't know. He went, no, he's dead. So imagine my surprise when I got a telephone call all those years later from J.J. Abrams, who said they were thinking of reviving, when really resonated, the character. Was I interested? Was I interested? So I said yes. I said, but George told me then. He said, yes, George will probably revise that with you now. Anyway, in our script, he's very much alive. He has survived with great difficulty. I said, how has he managed that? He said, well, we don't want to go into too much detail at this stage. But I think at that point, they were also thinking that I might have frozen myself, a bit like Harrison early on. He doesn't have much choice. And that was in case he didn't come back because he had another movie to do, I think. But, as far as the saga is concerned, he was iced or something. Didn't that happen to Walt Disney? Or don't quote me. There was a rumor anyway. Anyway, that clearly wasn't going to happen. They said no, but of course he would have a plan B, the Emperor. He's not an idiot. Obviously he might, be severely damaged in one way or another. So he had the best medical team in the universe standing by, and presumably the best drugs and so on. So it was possible for him to survive. And you'll see also how he continued to manage that in that sort of galactic wheelchair that I was in, and very carefully controlled by those little people underneath who were injecting me with all sorts of impossible fluids. And that was his survival, and he got himself to a state when he more than survived. He was ready to execute not Order 66 this time, but another even more megalomanic plan than he had in mind than before. So, as you say, I got lucky for the third time.
Are you going to get lucky for the fourth time? Or are you going to, no comments, man.
That's very interesting. I'm dead as a dodo. That's unquestionable. I'll never forgive Daisy Ridley for doing that to me. The ingratitude of the grandchildren. You know, you do everything for them, and what do? They incinerate you. But as you know, the universe is still alive, and he's around during certain periods when certain series are being constructed, or about to be constructed. So I have nothing to tell you, but who knows? Whether my physical presence will be there or not, my presence will definitely be felt.
You were talking a while ago, you said you wanted to hear from the audience.
I'd love to.
So Dave, the silly little guy that introduced us, he's going to run around with a microphone, and you're going to be able to ask questions to him. Do we turn on the lights for that?
Yeah,
Lights
that'd
down?
be good.
What do we do? Lights up, maybe?
Yeah.
Somebody leaned against a light switch. If you might be leaning against a light switch, it's kind of a joke.
Oh, that's not a joke. You're serious.
So you didn't mean to put on people down?
No, it looks.
They got to cue my joke.
Yeah, it was great mood seeing it there. So do we have somebody who wants to come up to Mr. Longwater for a question?
Hi.
One other question. If you could choose any other Jedi to be your apprentice besides Anakin, who do you choose?
Such a difficult question. You mean in the real world or the world of Star Wars? I don't know. It's very, very hard. Someone, I won't be specific, somebody young and corruptible. That's quite a wide choice, really. Because that's what he did in Jedi, Vader was sort of running down, literally. So he needed his son, he needed the same kind of energy and so on. But the son was bright enough not to allow himself to be seduced to the dark side. So it would have to be some young and unsuspecting talent. And there are a lot of those in the movie industry, so I could just sort of move around. And I could have the odd audition, things like that. And if they behaved themselves, they wouldn't get the part. Hello.
Hello. Just wondering if you have a favorite piece of dialogue as either Chancellor Palpatine or the Emperor.
Yeah, there are a few. But for bad taste reasons, I prefer Execute Order 66. Sad to say it, there are a lot of people in the world putting out that order as we speak. So it's alarmingly rude, particularly in Ukraine.
Are you ready?
How long does it take you to put on the show makeup?
Half of my life. The first time, it was 4 hours, and I was in the hands of the best people. Nick Dunn was the guy who did my face everybody in Return of the Jedi. He went on to great things, continues to do so. He did all the Harry Potter, all of those great creatures, faces, and so on, for the next work. And he was, well, not exactly an apprentice in those days, but he was a young guy, very clearly with great talent. And I said, well, what can I do? I said, what can I do to help him so he would fall asleep? So I managed that, and it was 4 a.m. in the morning. He just wanted my face to be still. So he needed work. And then when we went to Australia for Revenge of the Sith, different team, very good team. And George wanted me to be able to read The Horrific Man in the morning and meet the Chancellor in the afternoon. So he wanted something much faster than 4 hours. So they devised a kind of balaclava I put on over my head and my neck. It was fine, but it wasn't as good as Nick's stuff because it couldn't be as detailed. It was also alright because in that film, as you remember, he was sort of in transition, and he was particularly hideous before it settled down. And as a result of Sam Jackson, I don't know, Daisy Ridley, Sam Jackson, what have they got against me? Anyway, Sam ruined my face. With the help of so that's a wrong way of answering your question.
Just wondering, the Emperor's powers, you eventually used the lightsaber in the earlier prequels and that
Yeah.
sort of thing. What is your favorite power and that sort of thing? How did you enjoy the lightsaber training? That sort of thing?
Well, I was very surprised when I went to switch 2 hours before we did the shoot to discover that I did have a lightsaber and I was going to wield it because I imagined all my power was coming out of my fingers. I thought that's, why who needs a lightsaber when you've got electric lightning? But of course, he was moving out from the very angry senator, chancellor, into the monster himself. So yeah, there were fight sessions and I did a bit of training with Nick Gillard, who's a wonderful fight director. He was very understanding of something that was not naturally swordsman and Ewan. It was brilliant, I think, amazingly good. I did a bit of that, but most of the work was done by my stunt double, who was fantastic. And unlike a lot of stunt doubles, actually looked like me. So that was a relief. He was going to do most of the work, but then I did have to do the close-ups, obviously. All of that to make it look entirely convincing. So I got a bit of action. And that was fun, and it was good to do. And I'm afraid I did hit Sam Jackson a couple of times. He was very understanding, but I think that's why he wanted to destroy me.
Then you knocked him out of a window.
I did do that, yeah. Perhaps a little cruel, but he obviously hadn't signed up for any more movies at the time. So it was all right. He was immediately hospitalized and recovered very quickly.
Dave, where are you at?
Hi Ian, thank you so much for talking with us today. I have a question for you, just as an actor. Over the course of the 3 eras of films that you were part of, do you have a favorite memory, whether it's a scene that you shot or a day on set that was very special or enjoyable or just sticks out to you over your course with the franchise?
I do. I can go straight to it. The scene I enjoyed most, and it's the one in which I had most to say. It was, I think, probably the longest dialogue season in any of the movies, and that's in Revenge of the Sith, the scene in the Opera House, where I finally managed to get him to confirm that he's going to join the dark side. And that was originally going to be shot in an even more elaborate office. The interesting thing about offices was, a lot of people didn't get much of a set, it was the green screen. So I always got an enormous set with an enormous office. I imagined they'd sort of fix it later. But no, George said, no, that's how power works. Every time you get more powerful, a bigger office. That's how we're going to show it. But then when we got to do that scene, the one I just referred to, he said, I don't have the office scenes. I think we need to shift the location a little bit. And as you like the theatre, you're a theatre actor, I thought, well, maybe they could be chatting in a theatre, in a box, the Imperial box, well, not Imperial yet, but quite important box. And I thought that was a brilliant idea because it meant I could talk to him like that. Also, having kind of thoughts. Apparently we were watching a squid ballet.
Squid Lake.
Yes, exactly, yes. Book early to avoid disappointment. And we played that scene and it was very well written, that scene, so it was great fun to do. And it happened on a day, excuse me, I'm just going to clear my throat. I needed to do that, but also I really needed to do that on a day because we'd done, I think it was the previous, the fight scene with Sam. And so I had a busy day, and I don't know if you know wind machines in movies, but they're not little things underneath, they're driven by men. And there were about 4 of them powered towards us during that scene to make the clothes flow and the hair stand on end. All of which is good, but there seemed to be quite a lot of dust in Fox Studios in Australia, and about half of it went down my throat. So, and it was a Friday afternoon, end of the day, and I said, George, are we going to do it now? He said, yes, we'll do it now, and we can get it better, we need to get it better, we'll do it on Monday. And we didn't even time to run through the dialogue, Aidan and I had been busy doing stuff elsewhere. And I I said, well, I'm a bit worried about the voice. It might not sound, what we'd all like it to be. And he said, well, we'll try it anyway. And then when we did the first rehearsal, and Ian, the voice is great. It sounds as if he's in transition. I thought, from, as it were, the Chancellor to the monster. So I stopped worrying about it then, and now you're going to go back and switch and look at the scene. But they treated it a bit, but every time I've watched it, which isn't that often recently, I'm conscious of the fact that half the studio dust still down my throat. So it was kind of nerve-wracking, but it was also a great thing. And wonderful working with Hayden anyway, and his concentration was always absolute. And since it was Friday, we didn't have time to do the reverse. In other words, all the shots were on me, he was on, and on Monday, all the shots were on him. And I also, the reason that sticks in my mind as a memory is people say, are there any redeeming features? Is there anything at all that's good about the Emperor? I said, well, yeah, he loves going to the theatre.
You called the Emperor the monster, but I remember one time in an article, I heard about when this came out, you said you played it as if the Senator Palpatine was the costume and the real person is what you just called the monster.
That's true. The great George said one day when he was doing Phantom Menace, he said, now the thing about Senator Palpatine, I mean, we know what's underneath. Well, eventually people do in the movies, but our discussion, his and mine, tells us what's underneath. But if you look at your face, Ian's face, the Senator's face, as a mask, and that your eyes, Ian's eyes, the Senator's eyes, were in fact unreal, well, contact lenses, or sort of whatever they end up being as the Emperor. That might give you a way in, and it was completely fascinating to be told that. You wouldn't notice anything, I didn't have to do anything. If I'd done things, it would have been artificial. But it's wonderful to think that your own face and your own eyes as a mask, and behind that, underneath it, is something else. Something, in this case, monstrous.
Dave, where you at?
This gentleman's arm is so tired he has to use another arm to hold it up, so let's get it down.
Thank you. So you were talking about the opera scene, and that actually is a good segue to what I was going to ask. Would you ever be interested in ever going deeper into your relationship with Darth Plagueis or your master?
Well, of course, that would be interesting, wouldn't it? The only thing is, if they went into it deeper in the movies, it would have to be played by a younger actor, and that's a good idea, I think. Maybe one day they'll do that. And it would be very interesting to know what he was like when he was really young, as opposed to, because we meet him when he's when he was my age when I did the movie, which was sort of early 50s. It'd be interesting to go back a little further and see his, I suppose we have to admit, murder of Darth Plagueis. Yeah, I think that would be interesting. But it would be another actor. I know they're refacing people these days who can do anything and making them look younger. So I suppose it's not beyond the bounds of possibility, but it would be more interesting for another actor to get the opportunity to start that story.
Great question.
How might you contrast your work on some of the animated series with what you did in live action? What was it like working with Dave Filoni and some of those voice talents?
Yes, working with Dave Filoni is a treat. He's a sort of genius, one of the great Star Wars geniuses, as George would be the first to say, I think. But doing voice recordings for animated series is a lot less complicated, of course, than doing the actual movies, and it usually involves me going to the studio in Soho, and Dave getting up early in LA, and listening to the script that I've already received. So it's relatively straightforward. But I do the voice, I send the voice to LA, and
So my question is on the sci-fi technology. What was your experience like through the first movies to the last movies with technology?
CGI,
technology.
etc.
Yeah. It was very crude in the beginning and then changed. So
Yeah. Well, it was very interesting that first day on Return of the Jedi was the first scene you see of me was in fact the first day of shooting. And when I came down that ramp, I didn't see too much because the lenses in those days when they were supposed to directly ahead of the corner of my eye. And on the first rehearsal, I mean, I didn't really know where I was. I knew the set description, but I hadn't seen it when we rehearsed the first scene. So, I watched what I was rehearsing in the end, and then when I cut when I relaxed for a moment, I looked around and I saw what looked like thousands of people, thousands of stormtroopers. So unless you thought they were painted on, it wasn't them. And they were police by group of people going up and down the tubes, saying, stand up straight, take your glasses off.
Give me that camera.
And, so later on, I suppose, developed that of having CGI wise in post because there's so many people and so much money, etc. Although CGI, as I found out later, is not cheap. It's very expensive to do the process. Maybe it's got cheaper now, the way things turn to you. And then, of course, I think Phantom Menace was the first film digitally. So that was a new experience of the whole green scene motion came into play. So when we were up, for example, on the pole, Natalie and I was in the 17th, she was green. We were up very high, and everything else was green. There was some figures and markers showing us where the characters were, showing the figures. As I was saying, I was asked about this the other day, and I was saying it wasn't too difficult because we do move the crosses every now and again when we're making alternate movies. If you're doing close-up, I mean, the actor can't really get to you with people in front. It's better not to have their eye line because they're sort of doing that, which is not in close-up. And what they often do is just put a white cross in the edge of the camera and pull it around. So, as a film actor, we're quite used to that. But then I didn't have to do it on the same kind of scale as Hayden did and Ian did. And they were often fighting enemies that weren't there. And George wasn't always able to tell them, whether they are enemies that everybody would be scared of, even those guys, or whether it was just something they could shrug off. So they would offer lots of alternatives, which we try to do anyway as actors. But sometimes, in the film, probably the audience wouldn't notice, it wouldn't make much difference to them, but the actors would see themselves reacting in a way they wouldn't have reacted if the thing had been real, or if they'd known actually what they were playing to. So, I mean, we all surrender our performances. It's the right thing to do. What else can you do to that box that's taken away and edited and later becomes a movie? But occasionally, some of the actors felt their performance had been surrendered, but not used in a way that they would have done or chosen to have done, should they have known what was coming at them. So it's always better to have a human being to react to, in my experience, if you can. But sometimes it's impossible, and as techniques change, so we adapt to those. But interestingly enough, on episode 9, the last movie, that was shot on film, almost all of it. And so we went back to the old way, and it was always people that we had in front of us, people we reacted to. And we didn't have giant green screens every 5 minutes. We had, a studio and a beautiful set, certainly in my scenes for most of the time.
Dave, that kid's had his hand up for like half an hour. Space is turning red.
What was it like filming the scenes with Yoda?
Yes, well, of course, Yoda and Frank weren't there. Back to the digital experience. Yes, there was when I had to address him, so I was looking at him on the right, in a chair like this, I think, there was a sort of Yoda dummy, not very helpful, you know, spent time making that, because no one's going to see it, that I would address myself to. And then on the fight, of course, he wasn't anywhere to be seen, so I had to do a lot of jumping around, and missing, laughing, and all sorts of things. That was hysterical then. George says, we got about half an hour, just give us what you've got. So I did. I tried to keep a straight face, where a straight face was appropriate. So that was my relationship with Yoda, but my relationship with Frank Oz is very good. He's a great guy. And of course I worked with him before when he directed Dirty Rotten Scoundrels. And that was enormous fun. Frank is enormous fun.
Right here in front.
Hi. So I understand that you like to do Shakespeare.
Mm-hmm.
And I was wondering, what's your favorite play of his and why?
Well, it's an easy one. My favorite play of his is King Lear, which one day I'd like to play. No one usually plans. But if anybody's listening, and it's one of the most, well, perhaps the most pitiless of his plays. It's about many things, but the central story of King Lear, in case you don't know, is about a man with far too much power who abuses it, behaves in an authoritarian manner, has no interest in his people, is only interested in the immediate circle, and is not very interested in them. And then he makes the mistake, which seemed like a good idea at the time, of dividing his kingdom between, originally he's got plans, he's got 3 daughters, he's going to give them about a third each, although the youngest daughter would get the largest part, but the youngest daughter refuses to praise him, so he flies into a rage and banishes her to France. And then he says he'll come and stay with the other 2 daughters, even though he's already divided the kingdom, and they don't want him. So he's rejected, and he becomes dejected, physically and emotionally. Let me not be mad, he says. Well, he goes mad, and he's thrown out. He has nowhere to live, and the rain rains, and the hail hails, and the wind blows in his face. But he also sees what it's like to lead that kind of existence. In other words, to be homeless, no shelter, no food, no nothing. And he sees how a lot of his kingdom, a lot of the people in his kingdom, have lived their lives. The great irony of the play is he sort of regrets that he hasn't paid any attention to that while he was king. But now it's too late, because he's gone mad. And then the play, there are many other characters, many other situations, sweeps forward. And at the end, it's extremely sad and harrowing. And there's a little moment where he achieves sanity, but it doesn't last. And it's a cruel, difficult world. And the play doesn't really offer any hope of getting better. And yet it's a play that people love, because I think it tells it like it. Well, not always, but it's a large part of the time. And if you're living life in circumstances that are far from ideal, it really resonates now.
Do you own an Emperor Palpatine action figure collection?
No, I don't. I try not to, but I've seen some interesting ones, and friends of mine have very big collections. They're always asking me to sign. I said, well, you have to come to a convention. That's what I join the queue like everybody else. No, I don't. The short answer to your question.
You don't have one little
No.
one little Darth Sidious?
No, I don't think I do. No, I'm always interested though, in new ones that are brought along or photographs that come up. But I try. Otherwise, I think, speaking of King Lear, I might go mad.
One more youngling right here. Are you ready?
What's your favorite movie in Jedi?
My favorite Star Wars movie? I think it has to be The Revenge of the Sith, because that's the one which most happens to him, and I've got most to do. Although I really enjoyed the last one, being resurrected, and I loved being in that mechanism, that got me around, the galactic electric chair, and it was I was fitted for it. Imagine being fitted for that. And they were going to have two. There was going to be one where I would be on my knees for the close-ups. But I thought that was going to be a terrible thing to my back, so we scrapped that. And I was standing upright and held in by every possible kind of safety device, and manipulated by 4 guys who were great. And they said, Ian, no, they were London, we didn't know American accent. Ian, when you move, we'll give you a heads up. Okay. I said, yeah, I'd be grateful, thank you. And they would always give me a heads up, but it was usually the second after they'd taken off. So we're going to go now. Yeah, oh, thank you. And I like flying around the studio. I've always wanted to fly, and it was great fun. And Daisy was worried more about me than I was worried about myself, And she said, I think I'm going to have a heart attack if they do that to you again. I said, no, I'll be the one having the heart attack. Have you read the script? Anyway, that was that.
Was that stagehand Michael Caine? He sounded like Michael Caine.
Maybe it was, yes. Oh, hard to see, it's always so dark in the studios. Yeah.
We're right over here in the back.
Way in the back.
Right here.
My master wishes to know if you lost the fight to Mace Windu on purpose. Did you throw the fight?
Yeah, it was all worked out. I wanted to get the character. Yes, the character really. He manipulated the whole of that, and it was principally about not just getting rid of Mace, but getting Anakin to do it. Anakin to get actively involved in the path towards destroying people who got in my way. So, yeah, it's a psychological ploy with huge practical effects.
So you're saying officially, Palpatine would have beaten Mace?
I don't like the word officially.
Okay, unofficially.
Unofficially. In this quite private conversation we're having.
That's a great question. Dave? Where's he at now? It's like a little game. Find the long water. Where is it? There it is.
Do you prefer being the...
Where are you? Okay. Oh yes, I see.
Do you prefer being the council, the senator, or Darth Sidious?
Yeah, I think you know the answer to that. We actors love playing bad people. Although it was very interesting playing the senator. It's the reason I discussed earlier about my face being his face and so on. It was very hard not to sort of do little bits of evil glinting. But George quite rightly said, no, we just, he's too clever for that. He's got this perfect mask, and no one would ever know what was going on underneath. So I suppose that was, they were equally enjoyable because they demanded different things. But yeah, if you're going to pin me down, Darth Sidious every time.
Right over here in the center.
What would be your most memorable blooper that happened while filming?
Blooper? Well, I can't possibly repeat it, right? Maybe one day you'll see it. I was up that flying thing, and it was all very quiet and very careful, and I said the wrong words. And then I said an English phrase that certainly wasn't in the script. And everyone screamed, blooper! I haven't seen it yet. Maybe it's around somewhere, but that was it. And also, sliding down chutes and things like that. That was made for bloopers, And as I said earlier, up there in my flying machine, there are lots of those.
Across any of the 9 movies, is there one scene or even just an actor that you're jealous that you didn't get to play or you were loved to have been in instead of your character?
It's quite an interesting question because it's around somewhere, and maybe someday they'll release it. But in the script that we filmed 3 years ago now, I revealed the fact to Adam, to Kylo, that Daisy really was my granddaughter. And in the movie myself, this was a great moment of revelation. And as the character, I liked having it. And as the actor, I liked having it too. But the great frisson was in the studio when we did it, because, you know, I'm the only person who has, apart from JJ and a few other people, the person who has the script. I mean, people in the studio, at least 200 people, probably more, surrounding them. They don't get the script. They get to see what's happening in the day, but not in advance. So they didn't know I wasn't dead. And when my voice first came through, and there was a lot of this, and we'll come back, when Tyler comes through to find me in Mexico, he wanders along for a bit, and my voice is the first thing he hears, sort of tantalizing him. And my voice was just like this. They gave me a mic, and they said, it's a gold mic. In other words, gold studio, and they didn't know that I was going to be there. So on the first take, there was a lot of suppressed, oh my God, and that was great. And so when it came to the moment of revelation, she was indeed my granddaughter. Oh my God, was sort of strong. And I think but it was good to do, good to reveal, but you know, that's show business, and it exists someday, so you'll maybe see it as an extra on. We don't do DVDs anymore, but an extra somewhere.
Well, we're coming down to the end. So I just want to ask you one last quick question before we go. We're talking about our favorite Star Wars movies, Revenge of the Sith and Empire. So, do you have a favorite movie?
I think it has to be Revenge of the Sith.
No, I never.
Or you mean of all movies?
I want to know what your favorite movie was.
It had a big effect on me when I was quite young. I was at drama school, and Bonnie and Clyde. So the reason was it was such a clever film, so it could be done. One of the I think what caught my imagination was it was a film about two people who were immensely unsympathetic, the bank robbers and killers and all the rest of it, but were also very sympathetic. And I like that contrast. I like being sort of, you know, encouraged, maybe seduced to empathize with people who are not really empathizable with, if that's such a word. Because I think that's the essence of drama. It's a kind of confusion, but it's an enjoyable confusion because it makes you think and makes you feel it in a way. And that's it, did that to me.
Well, I want to thank you very much for coming. This was a fantastic interview. I hope you enjoyed this.